Well, I finished the sprint video yesterday by saying, let's see how Max handles the start for the Grand Prix proper. Well, it was raining. Well, it wasn't actually raining, it was very, very damp. Everybody was on intermediates, no grip off the line. Of course, in that situation, the drier side of the track is always going to be a significant advantage. And so it proved, not only for Max, but certainly right behind him, Sergio Perez, who was starting P3, and then, of course, Lando Norris behind him, all straight past Charles Leclerc, who was sitting on the right-hand side, the wetter side of the road, wheels spinning at the back of the Ferrari, and did a good job, I thought, into turn one to let Lando go. I call it turn one, the first chicane, to let Lando go. It would have been possible to have stayed on the outside going into the left-hander, but then there could have been some sort of drama going into the right part of the chicane, which is what his teammate did. Carlos Sainz, Daniel Ricciardo, very quick as well, down the inside in the other McLaren. Carlos definitely ahead of him going into the chicane, but he's on the outside. And at this moment, Daniel uses too much curb on the left, bounces a little bit and hits. Carlos takes him out of the race, and effectively Daniel out of the race as well, although he did restart. So that was an example of being on the first lap, being on the outside, being vulnerable to somebody like Ricciardo making that mistake. Interesting to hear Daniel say on the radio, "I got pushed." Not sure who by. Valtteri Bottas was behind him, but like 3 meters behind him, was nowhere near him, and actually hit Daniel as a result, and got a little bit of damage, but continued and drove very well for the rest of the Grand Prix. But yeah, that was Carlos Sainz out at the first corner, having driven very well yesterday. On this occasion, can't blame him at all, other than he could have said, yeah, okay, I'll let Daniel go and filter in behind him, more or less as Charles Leclerc did with Lando Norris. And sure enough, after a couple of laps, it was a very easy thing for Charles to DRS past Lando and get up to what was then P3, because Red Bull 1-2, Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez looking absolutely brilliant off the line. And of course, this was the moment to say, well, where are we at? Red Bull versus Ferrari. Looks like there's no contest now. Well, as I said yesterday, certainly in terms of the long runs they're doing in terms of tyres in the dry, it looked to be home and dried for Max Verstappen before he even got out of bed, I think was the phrase we used. But certainly on intermediates as well, the Red Bull looking absolutely superb around Imola. No sign of bouncing whatsoever. About 6 to 7 kilometers an hour quicker through the speed trap than the Ferraris when they were running without DRS, anything like that, just into the trap, which is before the DRS area anyway. So significantly faster in a straight line. And if the Ferrari had an advantage in terms of grip and downforce, which is what we've seen over the first 3 Grand Prix in Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and then Australia. If that advantage was there, it wasn't a great circuit in which to advertise that, because actually there aren't many corners in Imola. There's a lot of straight lines, there's a lot of acceleration runs and traction, which should be good. Traction should be good area for Ferrari, but in terms of sheer grip, mid-corner grip, there were not a lot of places where Charles Leclerc could do very much, particularly without overloading the tyres. Intermediates, obviously, in this first phase of the race. And it looked as if it was going to rain after about 20 minutes. Everybody stayed out on intermediates. And after a while, it became a question of they're turning into slicks and avoiding, obviously, areas of the track which were still a little bit wet. But by then, the race for Charles was gone. It was Max Verstappen well in control. And I'd like to say that there were lots of interesting things about Max's day, lots of moments that we should capture, but I can't actually, and I think this is a sign of how good he was and how much control he had of this race. I can't say there were many aspects of Max's drive that I can talk about, other than he was just a perfect example of going quickly at the right moment and being cautious at the right moment, which of course you can do if you've got a cushion. There was a moment when they came in for soft tyres. They'd switched to mediums when the track dried, went from intermediates to mediums. And then with about a third of the race still to go, Ferrari running P3 then, no chance of doing anything, decided to throw the dice and bring Charles Leclerc in for a set of softs just to mix things around. But that was very quickly counteracted by Red Bull, who bought first Sergio Perez and then Max Verstappen in for softs as well. So it was status quo. But the interesting thing there is to look at the out laps, or the first flying laps, of Max versus Charles, and indeed Sergio Perez, because this was a defining moment of the race so far as Charles Leclerc was concerned. He came in first, as I say, and his first lap out of the pits was a 19.2, which was really quick at the time. That was fastest lap. Then he did another one, 18.8, which was fastest lap. That was purple. Then Sergio Perez came in, and his first really quick lap was an 18.9. So he was right on the pace, and you can see Charles at this moment is trying quite hard. And Max, interestingly, first lap 19.3, second lap 21.1. And that is an indication to me that he was just getting a feel for the soft tyre, maybe had a bit of a moment, maybe the track was still a bit wet in some areas for the soft tyre. And it was on that lap that Charles, at the top chicane, what I would call the Variante Alta, that's right, top chicane, went into the right and then used too much curb and got the car sideways and spun, and did actually hit the guardrail on the outside, kept the thing going, had to come in for another set of tyres, obviously, and for a nose change. And as a result of that, he could only finish 6th at the end. So that was Max Verstappen. When he's doing a 21.1, Charles Leclerc is purple doing an 18.8. So that was a moment when I suppose you could say, that was Charles being a bit crazy and Max, the absolute driver, in control of what he's doing. But as I say, if you've got that much margin and the car is that good, it's not that difficult to be that in control of what's happening. And that's what happened to Charles Leclerc. He doesn't often make mistakes in the race like that, but this was a pretty classic Charles mistake. He does tend to use a lot of curb, and obviously on this occasion, the curbs were a little bit wet and he caught it at the wrong angle and spun. And it was interesting, actually, in the post-race podium green room to hear Lando. They were actually watching Charles spin on the monitor, and Lando, who finished third, brilliant third, turned around and said to Max, "I didn't use any curb there at all." And they sort of grinned. And so, Lando got it right. Lando, perfect. There was that, and I think that was a defining moment. I suppose the other moments for Max, I use moments plural, were when he came up to lap Lewis Hamilton, and there was no incident at all. Lewis knew what was happening, moved out of the way, lost ground to his battle at the back of the field that he was having. But what a moment that is! If you think it's pretty recently that Max and Lewis have been fighting head on for the World Championship. One day it's Lewis, another day it's Max. And here we are now at Imola at the Grand Prix Emilia Romagna, and Max Verstappen laps Lewis Hamilton, comes in for a set of softs. Lewis unlaps himself during that period, and then Max laps him again, laps him twice. And I don't know what to say about that. Obviously, from Lewis's point of view, well, we'll get on to Lewis in a minute. I think that was just another moment of the race, I guess, for Max Verstappen, lapping Lewis Hamilton. And I just wonder what his thoughts were at that moment. Probably not very much. He's probably just thinking, he has a back marker out of the way. Oh, it's Lewis. Yeah. Keep going. And he won with ease. He won that race with ease. And I think a lot of credit, again, to Sergio Perez, who did a very good job. Finished second. So it was a Red Bull 1-2, which is a huge thing, isn't it, really? If you think about Adrian Newey and how he's developed that car from being very, very quick, but nonetheless has a few fragility issues, has a few issues in terms of bouncing and other things not quite right. But here they are, race 4, and it looks like a World Championship winning car straight away. I mean, Adrian Newey, congratulations, Adrian. What a job you've done. And obviously, everybody works hard in Formula One. And as Lando said, the boring answer to McLaren is we'd all been working hard. Yeah, of course, everybody works hard. You work hard. Hopefully I work hard. Everybody works hard. But it's a question of working the right way with the right people, doing the right things, and understanding the methodology of what you're doing anyway. So, and that's what Adrian Newey has always been all about. And he's got it right. He's really got it right. And the car was so quick in a straight line as well. I mean, it was just ridiculously quick. Both of them sort of always, even when Charles was really good in the Ferrari, he's still 6 kilometers slower average than the 2 Red Bulls in a straight line. And that's a lot to make up. And we're going to come to some pretty quick circuits in the future as well, of course. So, yeah, great result for Red Bull after everything had happened. For Sergio, it was an interesting day. That great start from the drier side of the grid up to P2. Obviously, there was a bit of pressure from Charles. There were moments when Charles got quite close to him. And there was one moment when Sergio, I think it was the second chicane, just went in too quickly, straight lined it over the grass and came out, and Charles was right behind him. But within 2 laps, Sergio started to pull away again. And so Charles had the day, apart from that incident, obviously at the Variante Alta, he had a day of watching a Red Bull just getting slowly away from him, quicker, just about everywhere really. Not a great day for Ferrari at all. Carlos Sainz in the boondocks, first corner, and Charles beaten by both Red Bulls, but also making that mistake at the end. So not a great day for them at all. Lando Norris, P3, excellent result, third in the first corner. That was a gutsy move up inside Charles Leclerc, and Charles did the right thing to let him go, as I say, but there was no guarantee that was going to happen, and Lando just got it there and just drove really well thereafter. He didn't really make mistakes, he was just always there. And if you look at the results, you can say, Lando was third, George Russell was fourth, but whenever they were out, every lap, Lando was 0.6, 0.7 quicker, which to me is still staggering when you think about it, using the same engine. George is in the factory car, and there's Lando in the McLaren Mercedes, which also had a lot of trouble in the first race, don't forget. Just quicker, all over them around Imola. Really, really good result for them. Shame that Daniel made that mistake in the first corner and wasn't there to back it all up. But great result, well earned by McLaren, and congratulations to them. All working very hard, so is everyone. But great job. George Russell, absolutely superb. A lot of pressure right at the end of the race from Valtteri Bottas in what was possibly a slightly damaged Alfa. We don't know for sure. Maybe a slight aero tweak damage in that first corner schmozzle, but drove well. Again, very like Lando, just very consistent, got on with the job, and was in a quicker car for sure at the end of the race, quicker than the Mercedes. But George, George is so good. He's had a few incidents at Imola, and he's had one incident with Valtteri Bottas, and of course Valtteri was in the Merc last year, so there's quite a lot of riding on this result for P4, and I think Alfa was really expecting Valtteri to get that position, but it was George, really good in defence, no mistakes, in a car that was very, very difficult to drive at that stage. The tyres had gone away, medium tyres, and he finished fourth. And that was significant because he drove beautifully, drove really well. And where was Lewis Hamilton? P13. Lewis Hamilton finished 13 in the same car that George Russell used to finish fourth. Now, some of that result for George came as a result of an absolutely astounding start. He started P11, and when the safety car came out after the Daniel Ricciardo, Carlos Sainz first corner incident, he was P6 on the road. He made a good start. He was on the drier side of the grid, but then he moved quickly to the right. And in all the spray, you can see George Russell in the Mercedes thundering down on the right-hand side here. Yuki Tsunoda sort of half on the grass, and George keeping his foot in it. And as they get to to turn one, he's on the outside, managed to avoid everybody. And then, of course, when the Carlos Sainz Daniel Ricciardo shunt occurs, he sort of filters through, and it all comes congested here. And he gains about 4 positions there as well. So really good bit of driving by George. And that to me was a defining moment, if you could say, in where Mercedes are going this year, because there's Lewis Hamilton, who's down in, where was he, P14 on the grid. And let's face it, I'm not saying this to be cynical, but Lewis hasn't spent many days starting P14 in the semi-wet on intermediates in the sort of back of the midfield crud and going into a first corner with zero visibility. If I was a 7 times world champion, I would give it a little bit of margin as well. What I'm saying is George is a young, thrusting, aggressive, go for it racing driver. Lewis Hamilton is a guy who's been there, done that, seen it all. Yes, still very motivated. Yes, still incredibly quick. Yes, still wants to win. But in that situation, he's not going to do what George is going to do. And that's the difference. And I suppose that's what Toto Wolff wanted. If you think, where would Valtteri have been if he was still at Mercedes? Probably he would have been 2 or 3 grid positions behind George, maybe he would have been near Lewis, and maybe Lewis would have got in front of him, and maybe Lewis would have had a bit more confidence at that moment and had a better race. But, you know, with George up there and Lewis is stuck down the back somewhere, it was just an horrendous day for Lewis Hamilton. But again, we'll get onto that in a minute, just going through the other results. So Valtteri, very good job. He finished P5 in the end, but I mean, he had 3 very good runs at George with the DRS in the last 2 or 3 laps, but just couldn't get past him. And bear in mind that the Mercedes is really still slow in a straight line. That was a bit disappointing in a way, I guess. But anyway, Valtteri P5, George P4, and Charles Leclerc finished 6th on his second set of soft tyres. Yuki Tsunoda drove really well after that moment off the line. P7 for AlphaTauri on a day when the AlphaTauri wasn't that good. I mean, Pierre Gasly was way down the field and just couldn't get past. He couldn't even get near enough to Alex Albon in the Williams to get any sort of run on him. And Lewis was always stuck behind Gasly. And because Gasly couldn't do anything on Albon, it meant that Gasly had DRS, Lewis had DRS, but Albon didn't, but Gasly couldn't do anything about it. It was incredible, really. Very frustrating for all concerned. But that just highlighted the quality, I think, of Yuki Tsunoda's drive. Really, really good. Sebastian Vettel finished 8th. You know, he got some points, top 10. There was a bit of talk about, I read that it was Giancarlo Minardi had said, I think it's time for Sebastian Vettel to stop. This was after Australia. Well, you know, he kind of stopped, didn't he, really, when he decided to leave Red Bull. And when he got that terrible year, when he got beaten by Daniel Ricciardo, and go to Ferrari as a 4 times world champion. And then not much happened. Charles Leclerc kind of overshadowed him. And then now he's at Aston Martin, again, kind of there. So I think on a good day with a good car, half reasonable grip, he's always going to be there, isn't he? And that's what happened. But to say it's about time he stopped, I mean, he did stop when he decided to leave a really good team like Red Bull. And, no surprise that he has good days and bad days. But let him get on with it, why not? If he's enjoying his racing, he's doing a good job. He's got the Ukraine colours on the helmet, Sebastian's always a good guy to have around in Formula One. Kevin Magnussen, 9. He was quick, he was slow, he was quick, he was slow. But, the Haas is the Haas. It doesn't have all the facilities of the other teams, but they're doing a good job, and there he is getting points, so good luck to him. Kevin, I thought, was very good in the opening laps as well. A lot of pressure around him, but he was always there, didn't make any real mistakes, and very tough driver, really, to race against. He had a very good dice with Valtteri as well. And Lance Stroll, when the other Aston Martin finished 10th, also drove pretty well. Some interesting radio comments from the engineer to Lance. Things like come out of the brakes a little sooner or a little softer. All the things that actually are important rather than brake later here or get a higher minimum speed there. It was all to do with look after the left front as after the right front once the track was starting to dry and ways of doing that. And a lot of it was how to release the brake pedal pressure. And I thought that was quite impressive. So P10 for Lance Stroll. Alex Albon 11, Pierre Gasly 12. And then finally Lewis Hamilton P13. I mean, what a horrendous day for Lewis. There was a moment when I think it was Marc Genet was talking to the top 3 as they got out of the cars for the unilateral TV. And in the background, you saw Lewis just walking along. You saw this guy, head down, helmet, bit of purple on the helmet, just walking in the background. And it was a poignant moment. It was, this was a massive change, and everything is out of his control, just as the last lap in Abu Dhabi last year is out of his control. And I think it's very easy in Formula One for us to think that it's like other sports, and that, 1 minute you've got John Rahm, #1 golfer in the world, the next minute he can't win a tournament. Nobody says, oh, what is it? Is it the clubs? Is it the tyres? Is it this? Is it the ball? It's not. It's John Rahm. He's a human being. But in the case of Lewis Hamilton, you can't say that. All it is all the things around him that he has no control over. The car, basically, the aerodynamics. And it's, what that is like for an athlete is, as I said yesterday, I can't even imagine what it's like. And it's worse if your teammate is doing as well as he is, or is getting as much out of the car as he is on a difficult day. That'll be the for me, what George's performance relative to Lewis is tougher for Lewis to take than Mercedes not being really quick, to me, because a teammate is the guy you always want to beat. Doesn't matter what state the car's in. So yeah, Lewis hasn't been in this situation ever really. A little bit with Nico, I guess, but even then he kind of knew where he could get Nico, and he kind of knew where he needed to improve as well. What Nico was doing very well back at the factory or in a couple of areas of the way he ran the car. And Lewis did improve as a result. But this isn't a case of, wow, what's George doing there? I need to learn from George. This is all about Lewis, 7 times world champion, with an unbelievably quick guy in the other car who's presumably just taking a few more risks than Lewis, and justifiably so. Equally, I guess you've got to think, what's it like for Toto Wolff? I don't know how much he's paying for Lewis, but I assume he's paying Lewis a lot of money. And whilst I've always thought that Toto's done a great job, one of the most difficult jobs in racing actually is for a racer to convince a board of a massive company to spend hundreds of millions of pounds, euros, dollars on Formula One. And Toto's done a very good job of that over the years, with Mercedes, obviously, the Mercedes board. But now, he's spending a fortune on Lewis Hamilton, justifiably so, almost the market price, isn't it? But, he's got a guy now, he's finishing P13 at Imola. And that's a difficult situation for Toto as well. It just magnifies the problem the Mercedes team has with the car. So there we are. To me, this was a seminal moment for Red Bull, because all of a sudden they've got a serious race car now. It was very quick in the wet. It was very quick in the semi-wet on intermediates, and it was very, very quick in the dry. Admittedly, on a circuit where there aren't a massive number of slow corners, so maybe Ferrari would have been near them had there been more chicanes at Imola. Luckily, there aren't. But, fortunately there aren't. But this was a moment, I think, when we saw how the work Adrian Newey's done over the last month or so has, and what it's produced. And the guy, Adrian, is still right there. He's still the preeminent engineer in Formula One. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. And I think the result today is testament to that. Max Verstappen drove beautifully as the world champion, looked like a world champion in the car, completely in control. Sergio Perez, just phenomenal as his number 2. The guy did so much homework on Saturday morning. A lot of credit even for the win today, even though it was on intermediates for the bulk of the race, or the first half of the race. Should take a lot of credit for that as well. And Ferrari, I guess, from a distance you could say at their home circuit, they've got this incredible momentum going, but under the pressure, they didn't deliver. Very easy to say that, a bit of a cliche. It wasn't that. It was Charles not having the information that he needed. It was Ferrari not having the same information, actually, as Red Bull when it went into tyre usage yesterday in the sprint race. As a result of that, it wasn't a great start for Charles Leclerc on the intermediates and the semi-wet track. And as a result of that, the most he was ever going to do was P3. But they threw the dice, came in for soft tyres, and then Charles made a mistake and P3 became P6. So there was a Charles mistake, and there was not quite the same data back up in terms of how to run the tyres that Red Bull had. And you put those two together, plus Red Bull having a better car now than they had in the first 3 races, without any reduction in top speed advantage. And there you have a 1-2 for Red Bull looking pretty much in control, and Ferrari struggling a little bit. That's the race in a nutshell. Of course, every circuit will be different. It'd be really interesting now to see how the Red Bull-Ferrari battle goes as they get to tighter circuits. And then on top of that, how the battle amongst the rest of the teams works out. As I said yesterday, we have coming up this week an interview, be a surprise guest, about the whole aerodynamic situation, what the teams were looking at over the winter, given the limitations they have on CFD and wind tunnel, how much of the bouncing problem they could anticipate or how much they could not anticipate, and what the future holds for the current Formula One cars, aerodynamically speaking. It's going to be great. Don't miss that. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Thanks to Jack Craft. See you soon.